Hi everyone, and in today's lesson we'll start to studying the Jewish meditation. It's based on the works of Rabbi Arie Kaplan that wrote Jewish meditation book and book about meditation and Kabbalah. This is very interesting books about this topic. They are very rare, very unusual for Jewish world, and they little bit open the secrets behind the Jewish mysticism and how great rabbis of the past were growing in their spiritual ways and climbing the ladder of holiness. Okay, so we'll start from the beginning and start from introduction to Jewish meditations. What is this and what's the difference from other Eastern ways of meditations? So, as Rabbi Arie Kaplan writes, people are often surprised to hear the term Jewish meditation. Otherwise knowledgeable Jews, including many rabbis and scholars, are not aware that such a thing exists. When shown texts that describe Jewish meditation, they respond that it belongs to esoteric or occult concerns of Judaism and has little to do with mainstream Judaism. It is therefore not surprising that many current books on meditation give scant attention to Judaism. Also, most writers seem to be aware that mystical element exists in Judaism. The discussion is usually restricted to the Kabbalah or the Hasidic masters. Most books on meditation emphasize Eastern practices, and in some instances Christian meditation. But Jewish meditation is for all practical purposes ignored. For students of meditation, this is a serious oversight. Judaism produces one of the more important systems of meditation, and ignoring it is bound to make any study incomplete. So, as we see from the introduction, that very little people know that Jewish meditation actually exists. Furthermore, since Judaism is an Eastern religion that migrated to the West, its meditative practices may well be those most relevant to the Western man. Without knowledge of Jewish meditative practices, an important link between East and West is lost. This omission is all the more significant in light of considerable evidences that the Jewish mystical masters had dialogue with the Sufi masters and were also aware of the schools of India. So I will add a little bit of comments. So Sufi masters is the masters of Muslim. This is a so-called mystical way, the way Sufi connect with God and divine. So Jewish masters of the past had connections with Sufis and also with Indians. They were exchanging ideas and all the time connected. For the Jew, however, it is very important and serious. Jews are by nature a spiritual people, and many Jews actively seek spiritual meaning in life, often on a mystical level. Generations ago, large numbers of Jews were attracted to the mystical traditions of groups such as Freemasons. Today, many American Jews have become involved in Eastern religions. It is estimated that as many as 75% of devotees in some ashrams are Jews, and large percentage follow disciplines such as transcendental meditation. So we see that there is a fact that a lot of people go to Jewish people go to the other religions and practices. When I speak to these Jews and ask them why they are exploring other religions instead of their own, they will answer that they know of nothing deep or spiritually satisfying in Judaism. When I tell them there is a strong tradition of meditation and mysticism, not only in Judaism but in mainstream Judaism, they look at me surprised. Until Jews become aware of the spiritual richness of their own tradition, it is understandable that they will search in other places. A few years ago, I was invited to speak in a small synagogue in upstate New York. The weather was bad that evening and only 20 people showed up. So instead of giving the lecture I had planned, I gathered everyone into a circle and just talked. Most of the people there have relatively little knowledge of Judaism. In the course of our talk, I began to discuss the Shema and how it can be used as meditation. We will examine how to use Shema as a meditation in the later discussions together. One of the women present asked if I would do a demonstration, and Arie Kaplan agreed. The whole meditation could not have taken more than 10 or 15 minutes. Ordinarily, it would have taken longer, but in the situation I felt pressured for time. Still at the end, everyone, including me, was literally breathless. Collectively, we had experienced a significant spiritual high. Why can't we ever do anything like this at service? At service means during prayer, asked one of the men. It was a question I could not answer. The discussion turned to how cold and spiritually sterile synagogue service can be, and how a technique like this, which works so well in a group, could make the service infinitely more meaningful. From myself, I will add that today not every synagogue has very powerful spiritual experience, as we know. Most people come to synagogue, pray, and very fast, like it's some mechanic act, without any soul, without any deepness. And in past, when there was a first and second temple, it was absolutely different. It was not as mechanical as it is right now. I don't say bad about prayer right now. We have what we have. But in past, it was very deep. It was very spiritual opening. Now it's not like that. And one of the ways to bring back the way people can feel this uplift is through Jewish meditation. The discussion turned to how cold and spiritually sterile synagogue service can be, and how a technique like this, which works so well in a group, could make the service infinitely more meaningful. Together, we questioned whether the synagogue service was initially meant to be a meditative experience. If finding spiritual meaning is difficult to the uncommitted Jew, it is sometimes difficult to the Orthodox Jew as well. I have been approached by yeshiva students who are committed to observing the rituals of Judaism but fail to see how these practices can elevate them spiritually. Even more troubling is the number of Orthodox Jews who are involved in disciplines such as transcendental meditation. Most of them express uneasiness about these practices because feel that the benefits outweigh the dangers. When asked why they don't seek this type of experience in Judaism, they give the same answer as uncommitted Jews. They are not aware that such an experience can be found within Judaism. When my first book on the subject, Meditation and the Bible, was published in 1978, it sparked a new interest in Jewish meditation in many circles. For most people, It was the first intimation that Jewish meditation even exists. Also, the work drew on a considerable amount of published material. Most of the sources had never been translated from Hebrew and were available only to experienced Hebraic scholars. Even then, much of the material was difficult to understand for someone who had not engaged in meditative practices. To make this material accessible, the keys to understanding had to be found, and many of these keys existed only in ancient unpublished manuscripts. It's significant that most of the important texts of Jewish meditation have never been published, even the original Hebrew. The most important works exist only in manuscript, locked away in libraries and museums. To research this book, as well as subsequent work, Meditation and Kabbalah, the manuscripts first had to be located. This involves searching through scholarly journals and library catalogs. Once the manuscripts were found, copies had to be obtained, and when they were located in places like Lenin Library in Moscow, this was not an easy task. Many of the manuscripts were hundreds of years old, written in obsolete scripts that could not be deciphered only with considerable effort. So as we see, Arie Kaplan made a very deep work to uncover all the secrets of meditation from the old manuscripts that are around the world. Because so little on Jewish meditation was ever published, many people urged that meditation was to be found only in the backwaters of Judaic literature, in works not even worthy of publication. Actually, many works dealing with Kabbalistic methods of meditation were not published because the practices were dangerous and were not meant for the masses. Still, even these works shed considerable light on the obscure passages found in the published mainstream works. They are integral part of the puzzle, without which major areas of Judaism are difficult, if not impossible, to understand. So, as we see, without deep understanding of Jewish meditation, a lot of Judaism is not fully uncovered, traditional Judaism. And people can't understand a lot of things about it also. About traditional Judaism. Once the puzzle began to come together, it became clear to me that some of the most important mainstream Jewish leaders of the past relied on various meditative techniques. So this is a very important statement, because everybody sees a rabbi or a Jewish leader, big Jewish leader, and they don't understand why they can lead so many people, why they're so spiritually awakened. And Arie Kaplan found that each of these leaders, through the centuries, he was practicing Jewish meditation, and this is a secret that is very little told about in Jewish world right now. With the publication of meditation and the Bible, interest in Jewish meditation began to grow. Even the Lubavitch Rebbe issued a directive that Jewish forms of meditation should be explored. Groups that taught and practiced Jewish meditation were formed in the United States and in Israel. I felt privileged that my books formed the basis of many of these groups. Unfortunately, a number of groups also involved in Jewish meditation were practicing something far from Judaism. Some of them attempted to adapt Eastern practices to Jewish audience, or to Judaize Eastern teachings. So as we see, a lot of these groups and people started to use Eastern practices from India or something else and try to adapt it to Judaism way. But in this book, we will explore exactly the techniques that the Jewish masters of the past were using in their spiritual work. Also, these groups attracted a following of sorts. They were not teaching Jewish meditation. Meanwhile, together with a group of committed Jewish psychiatrists and psychologists, I began to experiment with the teaching I had found in the literature. Together we explored the inner space of meditative state. Among the participants were David Shakin, Simeon Applebaum, and Pinchas Bindler. Other members who made important contributions to the group were Arnie and Rose Gelman and others. One important discovery we made was that most text dealing with Jewish meditation assumes that the reader is familiar with the general techniques and intend only to provide additional details. The details were fascinating, but when we tried to translate them into practice, we discovered that too much information was missing. It was like trying to use a book on advanced French without a rudimentary knowledge of cooking. Without advanced French cooking, without basic knowledge of cooking means. The recipes were there, but a novice could not use them. To some degree, the puzzle was pieced together in my two previous meditation books. This book presents the most basic forms of Jewish meditation. So, from this introduction, let's go and to the first chapter. What is meditation? What is meditation? For someone who has been involved in the practice, the question need not to be asked. For a person who has never had any contact with meditation, however, the subject is shrouded in mystery. Too many people, the term meditation suggests an image of someone sitting in the lotus position with eyes closed in serene concentration. Others may associate meditation with holiness and spirituality. Individuals seeking spirituality might look into various disciplines of meditation without having any idea of what they are looking for. In its most general sense, meditation consists of thinking in a controlled manner. It is deciding exactly how one wishes to direct the mind for a period of time and then doing it. So meditation is concentration of mind in some way. In theory, this may sound very easy, but in practice it is not. The human mind is not a domestical animal, but rather seems to have a mind of its own beyond the will of the thinker. Anyone who has ever tried to concentrate on a subject only to have his mind drift to other thoughts is aware of this. Sometimes it seems that the more one tries to control one's thought, the more they refuse to be controlled. It's called like a monkey mind. It's strange that most people have never given a thought to their thoughts. Thoughts are so much part of our being that we take them for granted. One of the first steps in meditation is learning how not to take our thoughts for granted. A simple exercise will demonstrate how difficult it is to control your thoughts. In theory, this exercise seems ridiculously simple, but in practice is very difficult. This is the exercise. Stop thinking. Normally, when one is not otherwise occupied, there is a constant flow of thoughts passing through the mind. In this area, one thought flows into other almost automatically. This flow of thoughts goes on and on, like an internal conversation with oneself. Usually, this rewire is so much part of our mental environment that we don't pay attention to it. The first exercise is to become aware of your thoughts by trying to stop them. Try to blank out your mind for a few minutes and not think of anything at all. Sound easy? Stop reading now and try it. Alright. So let's stop a little bit, close our eyes, and try not to think about anything. Is it easy? Okay, unless you are very unusual or have had meditative experience, you could not keep your mind blank for more than a few seconds. If nothing more, the period of mental silence was probably interrupted by the thought, I am not thinking, or I am trying not to think. In practice, it's extremely difficult to turn off thoughts. As we shall see, control over the thoughts process is one of the goals of some meditative disciplines. There is another way in which you can try to control your mind. When you finish this paragraph, close your eyes. You will probably, when we finish reading this, you will probably see light or images flashing before your eyes. Give yourself a few moments to relax, and these flashing lights will subside and develop into a series of kaleidoscopic images in the mind's eye. These images will arise and change spontaneously with little or no direction by the conscious mind. One image flows into another, and so on. Now, with your eyes closed, try to control these images. Try to depict the letter A in your mind's eyes. Unless you have practiced this technique for some time, it's impossible to hold on to this image. One of the techniques of meditation is imaging, evoking an image in the mind's eye and holding it there. So we close our eye and imagine something and try to stick on this for as long as possible. In Jewish meditation, this is known as engraving. Here the image is fixed in the mind as if it were engraved. So it's like a picture. So that it can be held in the mind as long as one desires. This technique can be perfected only through extensive training. So as we see, meditation requires training. Having tried these two exercises, you can see that the mind has a mind of its own. There are two parts of the mind. One that is under the control of the conscious will, and one that is not. That part of the mind under the control of the will is called the consciousness, while that which is not is called the unconscious or subconscious. Since the subconscious is not under the control of the will, one cannot control what is passed into the conscious mind. One of the goals of meditation is to gain control of the subconscious part of the mind. If one were to succeed, one would also gain a high degree of self-mastery. This too is a goal of meditation. So as we see, the goal of meditation is self-mastery, and because of controlling internal states, emotions, and thoughts, great rabbis of the past, they were spiritually awakened, they were spiritually strong. And this is the way to the mastery. This explains why so many disciplines are breathing exercises as a meditative device. Breathing usually occurs automatically and is therefore normally under the control of the unconscious mind. Unless you are consciously controlling your breathing, it will mirror your unconscious mood. This is one reason why breathing is one of the indicators in a lie detector test. Yet, if you wish, you can control your breath, and do so quite easily. Breathing, therefore, forms a link between the conscious mind and the unconscious. By learning how to concentrate on and control your breath, you can go on to learn how to control the unconscious mind. So, as we see, this is a very important fact. By controlling breathing, we can control our subconscious. This leads us to controlling our emotions, our mental state, and our general success in life. The thought process itself is also controlled to a large degree by the unconscious, but it can also be controlled by the conscious mind. This is most obvious in the case of the rewire. When one is relaxing and not paying particular attention to it, The rewire flows from one thought to another without conscious effort. Indeed, there are a number of psychological techniques that try to imitate this free association in order to gain an understanding of the unconscious mind. No matter how free the association may be, when one is expressing it to a second party, it is never as free as in the case of pure rewire. By learning how to control the rewire, one can also learn how to control the unconscious. The same is true of the visions that appear in the mind's eye. Since they are not under the control of the conscious mind, they are obviously coming from unconscious. Controlling them is very difficult without practice. One can learn to control them, however, and doing so also serves to form a bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. One of the most powerful benefits of meditation is control over the unconscious mind. One learns to use the conscious mind to control mental processes that are usually under the control of the unconscious. So, as we see through meditation, we can start control unconsciousness, which is very powerful because usually we don't control it. And if we can control it, we can control a lot of things in our life that we do unconsciously. Gradually, more and more of the subconscious becomes accessible to the conscious mind, and one gains control of the entire thought process. Sometimes different parts of the mind appear to be acting independently. The conflict between two parts of the mind can be so strong that a person feels like two separate individuals. You probably know this situation when you want something one, and there is a conflict that you want something else. This brings to the conflict, and this brings to bad mood, it brings to bad emotions, and so on. Thus, for example, a person may be drawn toward a sexual temptation. One part of the mind is thus saying yes very loudly, yet at the same time another part of the mind may feel that the act is morally reprehensible. This second part of the mind may be saying no with equal loudness. The person may feel caught in the middle between the two voices. In classical Freudian psychology, this would be seen as a conflict between the ID and the superego. In our example, the ID would be saying yes to the temptation, while the superego would be saying no. Somehow the ego, the I, mediates between these two subconscious voices. Also, Freud's schema tries into a neat package. Introspection shows that the conflict is actually more complex than the simple picture of the ID and superego. There are many theories about the subconscious, and a full discussion is far beyond the scope of our lessons. However, if meditation is controlled thinking, it implies that the individual has the entire thought process under control, including input from the subconscious. The experienced meditator learns how to think what he wants to think, when he wants to think it. So, not when subconscious give ideas and so on, but consciously can select what subconscious will think about and what ideas it will bring into life. He can always be in control of the situation, resisting psychological pressures that work on the subconscious. He is also in control of himself, never doing something that he knows he really does not want to do. In many schools, this self-mastery is one of the most important goals of meditation. B'ezrat Hashem, In the next lesson, we'll talk about why to meditate, how to meditate, and other techniques of meditation. Thank you.